Am I the a-hole for laughing off my uncle's request to move into my house? So, my mom, 60s female, lives alone and rent-free in a 2-bedroom house that I, 40s female, own. I also support my mom financially because she has developed serious health issues and was only able to retire on minimum wage. I live far away and only visit her about twice a year, so my bedroom is empty most of the time. Yesterday, my uncle, 70s male, sent a nonchalant text to my mom saying, "Hi, my wife and I want to move houses to get rid of paying rent. Can't we just stay with you?" My mom had a legitimate panic attack and called to ask me for help. Now I always tell my mom it's her home and she decides what to do with it. But in this case, it was clear she didn't want her brother moving in and just couldn't handle the drama of denying him. So I contacted my uncle. I tried to be understanding of the situation, but he gave me nothing but the line, "I need my family support." I questioned how he and his wife couldn't live on their pensions. I asked if he had somehow accumulated too much debt, or if he was a victim of an elderly scam. I genuinely went into problem-solving mode because, from previous conversations, he should have been able to have a peaceful retirement. He basically said he wasn't asking for financial advice, he just needed to cut costs. And since my mom lives rent-free with all expenses paid, that would be the best situation for him and my aunt. I laughed. Honestly, I didn't mean to offend him. It was a knee-jerk reaction to the audacity of him expecting me to be his entire retirement plan. He hung up the call and sent me a text saying I was a cruel person because his only son died young and isn't here to support him in his time of need. To clarify, my cousin died in his 20s and was no contact with his father. My uncle was a deadbeat dad who never managed to provide for his family and always had financial issues. He abandoned his first wife and son to marry his current wife. They have been together for decades, and she has kids from her previous marriage. So I texted him and apologized for my reaction, and told him that while my cousin is unfortunately gone, his first call should have been to his stepchildren. I told him that my mom has her own life and that I am not rich. Yes, I am in a position to financially help my mom, but that comes at great personal sacrifice, and I cannot just add 2 more people to the mix. Nor should I have to. They are not my responsibility. Again, I was called cruel by my uncle. He then contacted more family members. My mom has 5 siblings, and they contacted me to tell me my uncle is devastated. None of them can help him. And they also understand why I won't, but they said I should have handled the situation better. How, I wonder? So, am I the a-hole for laughing and simply saying no to an outrageous request? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. The request was outrageous. Laughing at him obviously didn't resolve it in the most conflict-free way, but it did shut it down easily. See, I think I'm just an a-hole, because I'm sitting here questioning why OP apologized to the deadbeat uncle, who essentially said, "Hey, we don't feel like spending our money, so we're going to leech off you." Not the a-hole OP. I apologized for laughing. He found the laughing to be profoundly disrespectful. In hindsight, his whole plan was disrespectful to me. But that old thing about respecting your elders and all. Not the a-hole. Your mom obviously doesn't want him there. He also sounds selfish and has no right to call you cruel. Not the a-hole, but dude is going to turn up with suitcases. He better not. My mom will probably be frozen, but I will call the police, even from a distance. Not the a-hole. That's the most entitled thing I've ever heard. I think you even responded appropriately because that was a wild request. What did he expect you to say? He was actually convinced my mother was going to say yes. I think his belief stems from the fact that my mother helps him with hospital visits and calls him to remind him to take new medications, like antibiotics. My mom, although the younger sister, is kind of the problem solver for him. As for me, I do help my relatives whenever I can, but it's rarely asked. For instance, I bought medication for another uncle when he couldn't afford it. I helped a cousin pay a semester of college tuition when his loan fell through. If I am able, I help. Not only me, we all help each other, like the aunt who is a hairdresser and never charges family for haircuts, or when someone's house needs work and cousins get together to labor for free. We are a very tight family. I am just not a fool, and I believe that fact surprised him. Next story. Am I the a-hole for wanting my ex's daughter to stop calling me dad? I, 35 male, dated my ex, 32 female for 3 years when we were 28 and 25. She has a child, Amber, with her ex, who isn't involved in their lives. Amber was 2 when we started dating, so I was a big part of her life while she grew up, and she called me dad. However, her mom and I ended on pretty bad terms, mostly due to money and how she expected me to spend everything I earned on her and Amber with no savings. Things were not equal in terms of rent and bills either. She also did not want any more children or marriage, which is something I've always wanted. I'm currently engaged to an amazing woman, and she and her family aren't comfortable with Amber calling me dad, as kids and parents at the same school keep misunderstanding and thinking I'm actually her father. To be fair, I don't consider myself her dad. I've just gotten used to her calling me that. I work at her school, which is the only time I see her, and I never see her outside of school or do anything father-daughter related. My fiancé's family members are more weirded out than uncomfortable, which is fully my fault. In the years they've known me, I've never mentioned having a daughter or any child in my life. They accidentally met Amber when we were all at a restaurant, and she shouted "Dad" at me, which meant I then had to awkwardly explain the situation to my in-laws. Now here is where I might be the a-hole. I spoke to my ex when I saw her picking Amber up and asked her to speak to her daughter about not calling me dad. She was very upset by this, but said she would talk to Amber. This was 3 months ago, and yet there's been no change. She still calls me dad. So I sat Amber down on a park bench after school, explained the situation, and asked her to stop calling me dad. She burst into uncontrollable tears, and my ex, who came to pick her up, shouted at me and berated me, saying I should just let Amber call me dad, since that's all she's ever known. Am I the a-hole? Edit for details on my relationship with my ex. My ex was toxic, and the relationship was very bad for my mental health, including a suicide attempt, so I don't want to have anything to do with her now. It took me a very long time to climb out of that mental pit. You and your ex are both a-holes for letting her call you dad in the first place, when you weren't married and you didn't love her like she was your own child. My daughter's father pretty much abandoned her at birth. When I dated, I never introduced her to anyone I wasn't serious about. And for the few men I did introduce her to, I never encouraged or allowed her to call them dad. It was bad enough that she grew up wondering why her bio dad didn't want to be in her life. I didn't want to add to the trauma by letting her form a bond with someone I wasn't ready to spend my entire life with, and who didn't love her or treat her like his own daughter. If you loved her like she was your daughter, you would still be in her life and wouldn't mind her calling you dad. Obviously, you didn't really see her as your daughter, so you never should have let her call you that. Imagine sitting a 5-year-old down and telling her to stop calling you dad. Brutal. Everyone sucks here. This is a tough situation. You aren't her dad, and you don't see her outside of school. It's probably better for her long-term not to call you that. But to her, you were her dad. She still sees you every day, and you had been letting her call you dad. You were her dad for almost as long as you weren't. You are all she knows. I can understand your fiancé being uncomfortable, but honestly, screw the other family members. It doesn't affect them in the slightest. A simple "oh, he dated the girl's mother" should be enough. It almost reads like they're embarrassed. Your future son-in-law has a kid? Oh my, let me clutch my pearls. My wording probably wasn't the best. My fiancé's family are more weirded out. They accidentally met Amber at a restaurant, and she shouted "dad" at me, which led to an awkward explanation to my in-laws. Ah, that makes sense. I can imagine the, why is this girl calling you dad conversation. Still, asking you to tell her to stop seems a little extreme. That feels more like something between you and your ex. It wasn't their specific request. My fiancé and I talked about it and came to the conclusion that it was best for everyone. To be honest, I might have been the one to suggest it, but it was a long emotional conversation about my darkest times in the past, so I can't be certain. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not agreeing to pick up my niece at 3 a.m.? No questions asked? This happened a little over a week ago, and I'm still catching flack for it, so I thought I'd seek judgment. My sister had her friend over, and they were in the lounge with my sister's kid, who is 13. I'm not sure of the exact conversation before I went in, but I heard the friend Julie tell my niece Sam that if she ever needed to be picked up from somewhere, it didn't matter where, when, or why, she'd be there. That Sam could call her at 3 a.m. from the boonies, local lingo for an abandoned factory complex where interesting stuff happens about 40 minutes out of town, and she'd show up in her pajamas with McDonald's, no questions asked. Sam thought this was amazing and was gushing praise at Julie, who said it was nothing and that anyone would do the same. They then seemed to notice I was there, and Julie asked me if I would do the same. I said no, and that seemed to stop everyone in their tracks. So I clarified that, yes, I would pick her up, but there would certainly be questions, and it would be crazy not to have questions. Sam said I wasn't allowed to ask questions, and that it was none of my business. Julie was glaring at me for some reason and muttering something under her breath to my sister that I couldn't hear. I explained my reasoning. The boonies are over half an hour away, and there is no public transport to get there. If Sam was at the boonies at 3 a.m. and discounting the fact that she shouldn't be there, she wouldn't have gone alone. So there's another child to consider. She doesn't have any friends old enough to drive yet, so someone would have had to take them there. So I would need to first know that she was safe and unharmed, and at a minimum who she went with, how she got there, and where her friend was. If her friend went back with whoever brought them, then sure, I'd just take Sam home. But if her friend was still there, you can bet your butt we'd be staying until her friend was in the back seat and on her way home too. Sam got really huffy and said it was still none of my business, especially who she would have gone there with, and Julie made a comment about how it's not that deep. I said that it is that deep, and I know how Sam works. If I agreed to a no questions asked approach, then picked her up and asked questions later, she'd fly off the rails and accuse me of backstabbing her, which she's done before in other situations. Julie started going on about how I was implying she was irresponsible, that she was just trying to have Sam's back, but I was being a buzzkill and a nag, and that they never should have included me in the conversation. I could have said more because I really think Julie was in the wrong. I get the sentiment, but who tells a 13-year-old there would be no questions for being in the worst possible place at 3 a.m.? I left with a parting comment that I would pick her up if she needed me, and she didn't need to question that. But it is my responsibility as an adult to make sure everyone is safe, including her and her friends. Now I've been bombarded by people online, and some in real life, telling me I'm a crap person for not agreeing to save my niece when she's in trouble, and that I'm never going to be the fun aunt or have my niece's trust again. Some people are on the fence but think I'm more wrong than not, and that I got hooked on one specific scenario when it was just meant to be a blanket I'll be there for you thing. Kids are literal, especially Sam. I honestly don't see how I'm in the wrong, but every adult seems to think I am, so I'm after second opinions from people disconnected from the situation. So, am I the a-hole? My mom always said I could phone her whenever and wherever, and she'd drop everything to come get me if I needed it, especially if I was drunk and alone. She never said there wouldn't be questions, but she promised I wouldn't get into trouble for calling or asking, and that she wouldn't make me feel guilty for it. Not the a-hole. Some questions need to be answered, especially when safety is concerned. Others, like the why and what were you thinking questions, can wait until morning in a safe environment. Exactly what I've told my teen. He won't get into trouble for it, but there will be a discussion later. And the first question when he gets into the car is whether his friends are there and also need a safe ride home. This is the part people keep skipping. No questions asked is how you accidentally enable risky behavior. A better promise is, call me anytime, I'll come get you, you're safe, and we'll talk later. And yeah, if there's a friend involved, I'm not driving off while another kid is still out there. The mother is trying too hard to be cool. The there at 3 a.m. with McDonald's gave it away. I bet that kid doesn't get much discipline in general. That was Julie, the friend, who made the McDonald's comment. There used to be deserved discipline and gentle nudges toward better habits when Sam was younger, but now my sister is, letting her be her own person and discover what it means to be a functioning human. So she's kind of doing her own thing. I won't say I agree with it or really understand it, but she's not my kid, so I leave it be. Last story. Am I the a-hole for making my wife ride in the back seat because she couldn't stop distracting me? This happened over the holidays, and my wife is still upset with me about it. Our family went to visit my in-laws for New Year's. It's about a 3 to 4 hour drive, mostly highway, but it takes us through 2 metro areas with pretty significant traffic. My wife, 37 female, gets nervous about driving in traffic, so I always drive when we visit her family. She also tends to get car sick on longer drives and needs to sit in the front seat to help ease it. She has tried taking Dramamine in the past, but she's had an allergic reaction to it, so she doesn't take it anymore. I love my wife with all my heart, but she is not good at sitting shotgun. She makes huge reactions to any change in traffic, grabbing the handle, putting her hand on the dash, gasping, telling me to watch out, etc. It's not like I'm an aggressive or risky driver. I've never gotten a speeding ticket or been in an accident. But if there's a car half a mile ahead of us that puts on their brakes, she freaks out and acts like we're all about to die. It's incredibly distracting. I've talked to her multiple times about how her reactions actually make it more difficult for me to concentrate on driving, but she says she can't control herself because she's nervous in traffic. On the way to her family's place, she sat up front with me, and traffic was pretty bad. Lots of slowdowns due to weather conditions and, in general, just slow going. But I've been driving in cold weather my whole life and know how to control my speed and give lots of extra space to surrounding cars. I understand that you can't control anyone else on the road and that accidents happen, but I do everything in my control to keep my car and the people inside safe. The entire drive my wife was on edge, making all the reactions I mentioned. It's very distracting to have someone next to you doing that while you're driving. I mentioned this to my wife numerous times during the drive, and she always deflected blame onto me for the way I was driving. When we were getting ready to head home, I told my wife she needed to sit in the back, and our 14-year-old son would sit up front with me. I told her it was either that, or she could drive us home. She got upset with me and started giving excuses about her car sickness. I told her to take some NyQuil or something else to help her sleep, but she refused and told me I was being a jerk. I told her she could drive instead, and she refused that too. Eventually, she reluctantly got in the back seat with our 11-year-old daughter. The ride home was much easier traffic-wise, and my wife sat pretty much silent in the back seat the entire time, pouting. When we got home, she told me that she felt ill the entire drive, but didn't say anything because she didn't want to make a big deal out of anything. She told me I humiliated her by making her sit in the back and that I should be more considerate of her feelings. Your feelings matter, but you proved on the way home that you can control your actions, which is what I'm asking you to do. My request is not about feelings, but actions that make us unsafe. Unpopular opinion, you're the a-hole for treating her like a child in front of your children, not for asking her to sit in the back. It sounds like she wasn't given a chance to control her reactions first. Your reactions make it really hard for me to drive safely. If you're not able to control your reactions, it would help me a lot if you sit in the back. Then give her a chance to control herself, knowing ahead of time that you'll pull over so she can sit in the back if she doesn't. It sounds like this is something you've been dealing with for 15+ years. What was different this time? Kind of a last straw thing. I've tried talking to her multiple times and that's gotten nowhere. Like you said, 15+ years of this is plenty of chances for her to control herself. Not the a-hole. She just proved that she can control herself. It's a Christmas miracle.